Welcome to the Sunday morning plenary session of the 2017 Forward Feminism Conference. So the first order of business is to receive the report of the election committee, and I will ask Kim Villanueva, the chair of the committee, to give the report.
Thank you, everyone. It is my honor as the chair of the Elections Committee to announce the results of our election. Total ballots cast, 467. Ballots cast for All Feminists United Now for Women's Lives, 278. Ballots cast for Rise Up Now, 189. Invalid ballots, 0. Total ballots cast then was 467, so we declare All Feminists United Now for Women's Lives as the winner of the Now election. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Kim. All right, the chair declares that the All Feminists United Now for Women's Lives is the new executive leadership team of the National Organization for Women. Congratulations to Tony and Gilda. What is normal now is I will ask Tony and Gilda to come to the stage for a photo op. All of you with photographs, please come and take pictures. Toby then has a 2-minute set of remarks that she would like to deliver.
Well, we're going to be over here.
So good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for electing Gilda and me as your president and vice president. We are humbled and we are honored. And as you know, I'm so excited. I can't wait to get to Washington to get to our work. But first and foremost, we want you to know we intend to keep our campaign promises. We have been challenged in this election, all of us in this room and throughout the organization, to look within, to recognize the problems of racism and the alienation of our young feminists. The culture within now is sadly and not unexpectedly no different than what we have to deal with every day in our lives throughout the country and throughout the world. Women, especially women of color, are marginalized and denigrated. Young women are discounted. Too often they don't believe they are heard when they speak truth to power. This has to change. This is our most important work. We cannot move forward until we address the serious problems that we have within our own organization. Bringing these issues to the forefront of our agenda, unpacking racism and dealing with privilege. We have to move forward taking the needs of our marginalized sisters seriously, bringing their concerns, their challenges about our organization and our society to the forefront of now's agenda. We pledge to listen, to acknowledge, to validate, to learn, and to change our behavior toward each other. We pledge to be visibly inclusive, embrace our sisters, women of color, marginalized women, women with disabilities, and our marvelous, brilliant, emerging young feminists. We cannot call ourselves true leaders of the women's movement without all of us at the table with an equal voice, brainstorming, arriving at decisions to create a just and equal organization and society. But before I proceed, I just want to honor and praise the feminist leaders who came before me, especially Eleanor Smeal, the visionary, strategic, and astute political stateswoman. Kim Gandy, Patricia Ireland, and our own Terry O'Neill, who has done a fantastic job for their dedication, their decades of dedicated service and leadership. And I want to thank especially our worthy opponents, China and Monica, for their courage to run. I'm almost at the end. They challenge all of us to grow to be the best we can be. Gilda and I, along with our national board, state, chapter leaders, our grassroots will chart now's course to confront and deal with the serious challenges that women, children face in the Trump era, with you at our side. Again, thank you for your vote and your confidence in us. We will not let you down.
So the next business in order is to begin considering the resolutions that have come before this body. As you recall, the National Organization for Women's Conference is the supreme governing body of NOW. We're a little different than most nonprofits. The members per se are not the governing body of NOW. The board per se, the national board, is not the supreme governing body. The supreme governing body of this organization is the conference. So we take our responsibilities in this organization very seriously to pass resolutions to set the policy for the coming year. The first set of resolutions that we will consider will be the action program. This action program has been developed by the board over the past year. It was presented, the board voted and approved the first 5 resolutions that you see in your packets to comprise the National Action Program for 2017 to 2018. So those are the first things we're going to be considering as the action program. Now, before we get to the action program, I believe our credentials chair actually has final numbers. And Toby Abrams, if you will come and make a final report. It is still relevant today simply because we'll be voting on these resolutions. So, Toby.
Good morning, everybody. Madam President, I am again. pleased to present the following report on voting members who have been registered and credentialed as of 9 o'clock this morning. We have 558 total registered attendees at this conference, including 467 voting members, 19 special guests and other visitors, and 1 parliamentarian. On behalf of the committee, I move that the roll of voting members hereby submitted be the official roll of the voting members of the conference.
Thank you, Toby. Thank you so much, Toby. So, on behalf of the committee, Toby has presented the report. Is there discussion on accepting the report of the Credentials Committee? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your voting cards and let me see the pink side so I know that you're a voting member. And thank you, lower your cards. All opposed, raise your cards. And thank you so much, the report is accepted. Thanks, Toby. All right. And Emily, yes, I need a packet myself. That would be helpful. Okay. Does anyone not have a resolutions packet? We were trying to pass them out at the doorway, but we have, yes, here we go. We have people in the aisles passing them out. So just keep your hand up until you get one, if you would. Where are my glasses? Oh. Okay. Not yet. See, there's mic 3 over there. She's got that. And I think that's... All right. Okay, we have almost everybody has a packet. We do need more packets. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We need about 10 or 12 more packets. Oh, they're making new copies. Okay, all right. I wonder if people would be willing to share initially so that we can go ahead and get started with our first with the first resolution. Oh, we have tons. Okay, fine. All right. So we need about a half a dozen over there, a dozen, a half a dozen, something like that. All right.
Basically, I'm going to move to have a consent calendar so that we read off the stuff, and if there are no objections, it gets adopted.
And there's nothing on the floor, so I'm curious to know what that yellow card could possibly be.
Gordy Gustafson, Minnesota Now. I would recommend having a consent calendar where we read off the title of each one, and if there are no objections, it gets passed.
I do know how to do that, but can we do that for the action program? Okay. Is there objection to Gordy's suggestion? We have certainly done this in the past. We can simply read through these. If there is objection, Mary?
Yes, I just want to hear the read. Once they're read.
So the preference is to have the full resolution read, and then, well, that's not how it works, though. What we would do is say, you know, is there a request for discussion on resolution number A? And if there's discussion, then we'll put it aside. Is there discussion on B? Discussion, yeah, okay. So if there's no discussion, then we will go ahead and vote. All right? So hold on just a second. Yeah, right. Well, we can just, yeah, right. Okay. All right, so, all right, could we have, let's go through this and try to do an expedited consideration of at least some of these resolutions. Is there a request for discussion on Resolution A? All right. Is there a request for discussion on Resolution B? Yes. Is there a request for discussion on Resolution C? Is there a request for discussion on Resolution C? So you understand, if there's, I just want to be clear, if there's no discussion, it's automatically adopted. So is there discussion on Resolution C? Yes, okay. Is there discussion on Resolution D? Was that a yes? Anybody? Let's try it again, because everybody please be really, really quick. A red card, yes.
As I am visually impaired, I'm misunderstanding. Are these going to be read aloud? I haven't even been able to read them, so I can't respond to whether I want to discuss anything or not until I hear them.
Thank you. That is, you're absolutely right. Where is Emily Imhoff? We do have provision for, is large type, it doesn't work. Okay, all right, well, we won't do that. All right, then, what do, okay, so what we have is we'll call it a piecemeal consent calendar. Well, I will read Resolution A. If there is discussion, let me know. Well, there's already discussion on A and B and C. So I will now let me read Resolution D, and you'll tell me if there's discussion. Are we ready? Yeah, there was. So Resolution D. Resolution D, Protect Immigrant Rights, 2017 to 2018 National Action Resolution. Whereas the National Organization for Women supports the human rights of women and girls regardless of their immigration status. And whereas now affirms the human rights of asylum and movement as recognized in the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And whereas now rejects the xenophobic fear-mongering used to justify denial of basic human services such as education and health care, mass incarceration and deportation of undocumented immigrants, tearing families apart and denying thousands due process. And whereas the Trump administration's Muslim ban is a blatant attack on religious freedom and an attempt to perpetuate dangerous and false narratives regarding Muslims and international terrorism, propaganda that now has worked to counter since 2001. And whereas women and girls make up 51% of undocumented immigrants and are deported at higher rates. And whereas immigrant women's access to employment-based visas is disproportionate because the U.S. immigration system prioritizes STEM professions where women are grossly underrepresented. And whereas undocumented women are 3 to 6 times more likely to experience domestic abuse than their US-born counterparts, and more likely not to report that violence as a result of their immigrant status. And whereas over 11 million undocumented immigrants are vulnerable to human trafficking and abuse from lack of labor standards enforcement, the restaurant industry alone employs over 1.1 million undocumented immigrants, and 52% of all restaurant workers are women. And whereas now continues to build upon its strong history of advocating for the rights of immigrant women, including the founding of the National Coalition for Immigrant Women's Rights in 2013, participation in nationwide demonstrations that demand comprehensive immigration reform, and support of Senator Mazie Hirano's 2013 amendment to Bill S-744 that provided an equitable scale for work visas that focus on industries dominated by women. And whereas in the proud tradition of the 1980s U.S. sanctuary movement to protect and support Central American refugees fleeing violence, a new sanctuary movement is arising in the form of sanctuary cities, counties, states, and school districts, where local agencies follow all legal requirements but also exercise their sovereign jurisdictional authority to refuse to interrogate people about their immigration status on behalf of Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement. And whereas this new movement includes sanctuary restaurants and sanctuary homes in which employers of restaurant workers and domestic workers comply with all laws, but also respect their immigrant workers' dignity, human rights, and constitutional rights. Therefore, be it resolved that now will include in its 2017 to 2018 National Action Program a campaign to protect immigrant rights that focuses on the unique abuses now faced by immigrant women as a direct result of the Trump administration, such as the Muslim ban, the incarceration of undocumented immigrant families in detention centers, and a decrease in reports of domestic and sexual assaults on undocumented women for fear of deportation. And be it further resolved that this campaign will encourage its activists and leaders to mobilize around the sanctuary movement, including sanctuary restaurants, homes, school districts, cities, counties, and states, through partnerships with allied organizations like Restaurant Opportunities Center, RUC United. And be it finally resolved that this campaign will raise awareness on the variety of resources available to legal and undocumented immigrants, including but not limited to the ACLU's Know Your Rights Initiative, the Immigrant Defense Project's ICE Raid Toolkit, United We Dream's Deportation Defense Cards, and other tools that help protect immigrants and immigrant communities. So that is Resolution D. Is there discussion? There's discussion. All right, moving to Resolution E on our modified consent calendar. Resolution E reads as follows. End the criminalization of trauma and sex abuse survivors, the 2017 to 2018 National Action Program resolution. Whereas 1 in 3 teenage girls in the United States report being a survivor of sexual violence, with young women of color and those who identify as LGBTQIA+ being particularly vulnerable. And whereas the number of girls in the juvenile justice system is on the rise, which is directly related to A, being pushed out of school where trauma-related services are not available, and B, the fact that despite being too young to legally consent, survivors of child sex trafficking are still viewed in many jurisdictions as perpetrators and arrested as such. And whereas school systems that punish rather than provide appropriate services to girls and young women who've experienced trauma are failing to provide the equitable educational opportunity to which girls are entitled under Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972. And whereas these phenomena are all part of a larger problem, which is the criminalization of trauma. And whereas the 2016 to 2017 National Action Program produced resources for activists to engage with their school districts, boards, and Title IX coordinators to encourage the provision of trauma-related services to students and the elimination of zero-tolerance policies and other extreme measures that unfairly target girls of color. Therefore, be it resolved that the National Organization for Women's 2017 to 2018 National Action Program will include a campaign to end the criminalization of trauma, to address the issue of school push-out among trauma survivors, ensuring that A, all schools have a properly trained Title IX coordinator who can not only handle cases of sexual assault, but also be trained to identify it. B, schools train faculty and staff on identifying students who are in need of trauma-informed services. C, schools develop protocols and provide services for traumatized students to ensure an equal education opportunity for survivors, allowing them to stay in school and recover from trauma. And D, schools provide services and resources in needed languages. And be it further resolved that the End the Criminalization of Trauma campaign will include an awareness-raising component among members, candidates for public office, and the general public about the broader issue of the criminalization of trauma and the importance of understanding how trauma impacts girls, and in particular girls of color and LGBTQIA+ students. The campaign will work with allies such as Rights for Girls, authors of the Sexual Abuse to Prison Pipeline report, to lift up the stories of girls and young women who are caught up in the juvenile and criminal justice systems, and to collaborate on legislative solutions. Be it finally resolved that NOW will work with NOW PAC and its allies to ensure that political candidates are educated on this issue and support the rights of all girls, especially girls of color and gender nonconforming students, to access and continue their education. Is there discussion on this resolution?
Second.
There is discussion. All right. Resolution number F. That was a joke. So I will now read Resolution F to determine whether there is discussion on this resolution. So, let's go ahead and read it. Resolution F, resolution to support efforts to prevent high-cost predatory lending. Whereas now commends the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, CFPB, and its director, Richard Cordray, for their efforts to fight against predatory lending products such as payday loans and car title loans that have forced and held women and communities of color, among others, into the debt trap. And whereas many short-term, small-dollar loans, including payday loans, tend to be associated with exorbitant interest rates and other high-cost, wealth-stripping fees, typical interest rates for these loans exceed 300%, and whereas most payday borrowers make less than $30,000 a year, and nearly half default on a payday loan, compared to only 3% of standard bank loan borrowers, despite the fact that most of those who default actually pay fees in excess of the original principal. Payday loans trap people in cycles of debt that drain local economies and result in a cascade of financial consequences, such as increased overdraft fees, delayed medical care, and even bankruptcy. And whereas studies have repeatedly shown that the wealth-stripping effects of predatory lending practices have a disproportionate impact on women, families of color, and low-wealth families, robbing households of wages and savings that could otherwise be reinvested into wealth building and into local neighborhoods and communities. And so I'm hearing from people that they want to hear the reading, especially if they're visually impaired. So if we can keep the conversations to the outdoors and then come back in after the conversation, that would be awesome. Thank you. Let's see. And whereas, where do we? Thank you. Payday loans using even higher. Payday loan use is even higher among single mothers. Payday loans are primarily used to pay for household expenses, expenses that tend to be the responsibility of women. And whereas short-term small dollar lenders, including payday and car title lenders, collect over $8 billion in penalties and fees from borrowers on an annual basis. And whereas many high-cost, small dollar lenders do not assess a borrower's ability to repay a loan, considering both income and expenses, and in fact intentionally rely on the unaffordability of these loans to extract huge profits from borrowers stuck in the debt trap cycle. And whereas women overwhelmingly support strengthening regulation of payday loans, 72% of women say that passing additional regulation of the payday lending industry is important to them. 75% of women support the CFPB's proposal to regulate payday lenders. And whereas subsequent to extensive research of payday lending practices, the CFPB is currently engaged in the rulemaking process for rules that have the potential to end the debt trap created by unaffordable, high-cost, small-dollar loans by ensuring that lenders require borrowers have an ability to repay their loans. And whereas now strongly condemns abusive, predatory, wealth-stripping lending practices in all forms, particularly those that disproportionately target women, communities of color, and low-wealth families, therefore, be it resolved that now supports efforts by the CFPB to rein in the abusive, wealth-draining practices of predatory lenders. And be it further resolved that now supports adoption of strong rules to protect consumers across the country, requiring high-cost, small-dollar lenders to ensure that loans are affordable when considering borrowers' income and expenses, and to ensure the loans can be repaid without refinancing or defaulting. And be it further resolved that now supports state legislation that ends the predatory payday loan debt trap, establishing an interest rate cap of 36% or less, and protects against triple-digit interest rate loans. And be it finally resolved that now encourages the CFPB to adopt rules that encompass tactics used by predatory lenders to evade regulation. So that is resolution F. Is there discussion? Yes. All right. Got it. Okay.
Madam Chair,
GH.
I have a request for information.
Yes, that's a red card. Thank you so much. Can please tell us who you are and what state you're from?
My name is Audrey Muck, and I am from Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And my request for information, these last 3 resolutions, are they the ones we are going to take up in the second plenary session?
Well, I mean, if we get if we get there in this first plenary session, we will move immediately to those.
Okay. That was the question.
Okay.
But the National Action Program was set for this one, and then the remaining 3 for the second. Not sure about the schedule.
Yeah, the way we've done it in the past is that typically the action program takes the entire first part of the morning, then we break at 11 so people can check out of their rooms, and then we come back.
Right.
So that's, I hope that answers your question. All right, thanks, Audrey. If there is objection to moving ahead with the others, if we're done early, we can just go, get another cup of coffee. I don't know, we'll talk. All right. Resolution G, I just want to give you all a heads up. As I was reviewing these resolutions this morning, there is I'm going to call it a typo in 2 of the resolve clauses of Resolution G, and when we get there, I'll explain to you what I believe the typo is, and I will ask for, without objection, we can just correct those 2 typos. But first, I will read the resolution. Resist Resilience and Grit Campaign to End Violence Against Indigenous Women. Whereas, as of 2017, now does not have policy supporting the 2007 United Nations Declaration of Indigenous Peoples as the minimum standard for the survival, dignity, and well-being of the indigenous peoples of the world. And whereas it is the 10-year anniversary of the United Nations resolution on 18th December 2007, eliminating rape and other forms of sexual violence in all their manifestations, including in conflict and related situations, and recognizing that rape can constitute a war crime, a crime against humanity, or a constitutive act with respect to genocide, and that now does not have a statement, policy, or action about the missing and murdered Indigenous women. And whereas recognizing that, 1, Indigenous peoples experience the highest levels of poverty, marginalization, and forcible relocation, which contributes to the destruction of their social and political structures and results in physical and spiritual dislocation in the U.S. and worldwide. And 2, there is an urgency to protect Indigenous women's autonomy and control over their traditional lands in a time of impinging material and economic interests of states and non-state entities. And 3, now has not yet made a stand with a policy endorsing our Indigenous women and allies who are demanding emancipation to attain free, prior, and informed consent of Indigenous women's rights, and, therefore be it resolved that now supports and encourages chapters and states to implement a creative, interactive, multimedia, Resist, Resilience, and Grit campaign in solidarity to re-educate the agents of oppression on the issues of Indigenous rights, contamination of water, and violence against women. And be it further resolved that now chapters and states, and here's where we have what I believe to be a typo. It says, be it further resolved that now chapters and states will develop a campaign to end violence against women and allies on Indigenous lands. Chapters and states in our organization are autonomous, so I believe that in fact the way it was intended to be stated was, be it further resolved that now encourages chapters and states to develop. Without objection, can we simply make that necessary change? Thank you. And Ray, the typist, have you made that? Thank you. And then change the will to 2. So now encourages chapters and states to develop a campaign to end violence against women and allies on indigenous lands, and be it further resolved that now endorses the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples as a means to protect the rights of indigenous women while working with them to contribute toward the solutions to some of our present-day challenges. And be it finally resolved that now chapters and states, and here we have the same typo issue, I think it should say that now encourages chapters and states as a signal to all local enforcement agencies, the National Guard, and the military to support a citizen's suit against those attacking human rights defenders, water protectors, land defenders, et al. At Standing Rock. Without objection, that typo correction is made, and that is Resolution G. Is there discussion? There is discussion. Finally, we come to Resolution H. Okay. Now, resolution to endorse Cities for CEDAW Campaign 2017. Whereas, because women's rights are human rights, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, is a landmark international agreement that affirms principles of fundamental human rights and equality for women around the world, which obligates those countries that have ratified or acceded to it to take all appropriate measures to ensure the full development and advancement of women in all spheres: political participation, education, employment, healthcare, housing, economic, personal and community safety, social, legal, marriage, and family relations. And whereas the National Organization for Women has passed numerous resolutions of support calling for the U.S. government to ratify CEDAW, outlined now member campaigns and calls to action in 1997, 2000, 2002, 2006, 2008, and 2009, but the U.S. has neither ratified nor acceded to CEDAW, one of only 4 nations out of 193, and appears very unlikely to do so. And whereas diverse feminist leadership in the United States, led by nearly 200 organizational member CEDAW task force of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights and the Cities for CEDAW campaign, have determined that a U.S. cities strategy to pass ordinances at local levels with grassroots campaigns result in the implementation of comprehensive women's rights contained in CEDAW. And whereas more than 25 communities across the U.S. have passed ordinances or resolutions as cities for CEDAW, including Los Angeles, San Francisco, Louisville, Honolulu, Miami-Dade County, New Orleans, Pittsburgh, and Cincinnati, plus more than 40 cities located in such diverse states as North Carolina, Maine, New York, Illinois, and Montana, are in the process of exploring becoming a city for CEDAW. And whereas becoming a city for CEDAW requires 1, a gender analysis of city departments and operations, such as policies, programs, and budgets that address barriers to the full equality for women and girls. 2, an oversight body to monitor the implementation of a local CEDAW ordinance. And 3, funding to support the implementation of the principles of CEDAW, assuring our rights are real. And whereas support of the Cities for CEDAW campaign fully incorporates a women's human rights framework and gender equality, will complement and strengthen the campaigns for U.S. constitutional equality with the ratification of an Equal Rights Amendment. And whereas, because now maintains non-governmental organization, NGO, consultative status with the United Nations, supports a now Global Feminist Issues and Strategies Task Force, ensuring exchanges of local and global strategies and best practices, which will strengthen Cities for CEDAW implementation. Therefore, be it resolved that the National Organization for Women endorse the Cities for CEDAW campaign, which is a grassroots movement joined by the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, the NGO Committee on the Status of Women, New York, the San Francisco Department on the Status of Women, the Women's Intercultural Network, along with the U.S. Conference of Mayors, whose 2014 resolution calls for support of 100 cities to adopt ordinances for CEDAW. And be it further resolved that now encourages now chapters to explore Cities for CEDAW campaigns in their communities or support in their communities or support existing Cities for CEDAW ordinances, resolutions, using the existing toolkit and other resources developed by the Cities for CEDAW campaign, and be it finally resolved that the Global Feminist Issues and Strategies Task Force work in collaboration with the Action Center and state and chapter now leadership to implement this resolution. That is Resolution H. Is there discussion? We have our first resolution of the conference. Thank you all so much. Well done. All right. All right. Right? And I hereby declare Resolution H adopted.
Terry.
All right. So, that's
Terry.
that. We have a red card. Yes.
I have a point of personal privilege, and I know
Yes.
that this is probably not the right time to do it, but I wanted to make sure as many people hear how much we appreciate the work that you've done before everybody starts leaving to go and check out of their rooms. And so for those people who are on the board, will board members please stand up?
Oh, my God.
Board members, national now board members, please stand up. Okay. On behalf of the board, I wanted to present you with this little token of our esteem, and it says, President Terry O'Neill, thank you for your leadership, dedication, and service to now. Our world is a better place because of you.
Thank you so much. Can I put it maybe over there, out of your way? Okay. That is really beautiful. It's pretty. It's lovely. Thank you so much to the board. Yes, Joan. Please tell us who you are and what state you're from.
Joan Wakevitz, Palm Beach County, Florida. Just a procedural question. I thought that we were adopting the language of the resolution, but not yet voting on it. When there was no, ought there not to be a vote?
No. If there is no, on an expedited consent calendar process, if there is no objection, then the chair automatically declares it adopted.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, all right, so next in order is consideration of Resolution A. Without objection, well, this resolution has actually not been read aloud, but do we need it to be read aloud? Sharon, would you prefer that? Yes, all right, well, it hasn't been read. Let's do it. Okay, ratify the Equal Rights Amendment. And by the way, this is the first of 5 resolutions that comprise the National Action Program as developed by the board and is being presented by the board to the conference today. Ratify the Equal Rights Amendment, 2017 to 2018 National Action Program Resolution. Whereas the National Organization for Women, NOW's National Action Program, includes a campaign to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment to the Constitution, and whereas this campaign has mobilized activists online and on the ground to support both the 3-state and start-over strategies, as well as state-level ERAs. And again, I will ask if people have conversations, if you could just step outside the room and then come on back when your conversation is done, that would be much appreciated. And whereas Nevada became the 36th state to ratify the ERA, underscoring growing momentum to be capitalized on along the road to constitutional gender equality, and whereas ratification efforts continue in ERA target states such as Virginia, Illinois, North Carolina, and Florida, and state-level ERA legislation is moving forward in Maine, Louisiana, and Delaware. And whereas 72% of individuals think the ERA is already an amendment to the U.S. Constitution, and many feminist activists are not aware of efforts to ratify the ERA, and Whereas the continuation of ERA advocacy relies on the unification of feminist activists of diverse social and cultural identities, age, race, class, sexual orientation, religion, ability, nationality, gender, and other axes of identity, therefore be it resolved that now will include in its 2017 to 2018 National Action Program the continuation of its campaign to ratify the ERA. And be it further resolved that this campaign will include working with State Now organizations in their efforts to ratify the national ERA and/or to pass a state-level ERA. Mobilizing for passage of legislation in Congress supportive of the three-state and start-over strategies, and the use of digital advocacy such as Now's Visions for Equality awareness-raising microsite to uplift storytelling and increase the number of younger online activists who know the status of the national ERA and support its ratification. And be it finally resolved that Now will promote diverse and intersectional interpretations of constitutional equality that reflect the many lived experiences of those of diverse social and cultural identities, age, race, class, sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, immigration status, religion, ability, nationality, gender, and other axes of identity in the United States. That is Resolution A, and what is in order is a debate. So we have mic 1 over on your right, my left. We have mic 3. We don't know where mic 2 is. I think it's a handheld mic. It'll be floating around. Anyway, we do have discussion on... Mic 2 is a handheld mic, and Chioki, could you just stand up and wave so people can see? So come here and stand online there. So we have a debate on mic 3. Hello. Yes, mic 3. Please give us your name and tell us what state you're from.
Hi, my name is Sharon Gray, and I am from the Fort Myers, Florida chapter, well, Lee Collier chapter. New to Now after 1969, 70 maybe.
Welcome
So,
back.
First conference.
We've missed you.
And just two questions on the Resolution A. I did attend a workshop here that they kind of went over some of the things with getting the ratification, and they included things as like immigration status, which really had nothing to do with what I recall the original ERA. And I think the language of the amendment needs to be included in this. The actual sentence needs to be included here as to what the ERA amendment is. It's not included. The other question I have is the very first sentence, ratify the Equal Rights Amendment to the Constitution. I'm asking that the U.S. Constitution be inserted there.
So I'm going to give you the opportunity to later to make a motion to amend that part of your comments. It sounds like you have two amendments you would like to make. A motion paper. Where is motion? Can someone tell me where? So there is motion paper on everyone's table? Oh, motion paper can be found at the mics. If you wish to make an amendment, please fill it out first. Here's how this works. I cannot consider the proposed amendment until I see it in writing. It is in triplicate. You'll see the motion paper is in triplicate. The top page is the most legible. It goes to our typist, Ray and M.E. at the front table here. Yes, who are wonderful. The second most legible, that's, I believe, the pink copy, goes to me so I can read it. And the third, the final one, stays with the maker of the motion to amend because the maker of the motion to amend presumably knows what it's supposed to say. So if you will be writing that, I will consider other debate on this on this resolution. But before we get there, one thing that you did not mention as an amendment was you correctly observed that that immigration status, race, sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, those considerations were not part of the debate in Congress around the ERA in the 1970s when Congress adopted the ERA and presented it to the states for ratification. That was not part of the conversation back in the early 1970s. It is very much part of the conversation today. The language of the ERA itself states that equality of rights under the law shall not be abridged or denied on account of sex. Now, that is very broad language, and in the 21st century, we believe that the interpretation of that language is that it covers all women. It covers transgender women, not just in their specifically femaleness, but in all of the challenges that they experience as transgender women, as lesbians, as bisexual women, as women of color, as immigrant women. There are all these different types of challenges that women who are not white, who don't have white privilege, women who are not upper middle class and don't have class privilege, women who don't have specific types of privilege, right? So the 21st century interpretation of that very broad language is absolutely, if it's going to be intersectional, it must explicitly acknowledge all of these intersecting identities that are used against people. All right, so while you're working on this, is there other discussion? Oh, thank you. Is there other discussion of Resolution A? We've got a couple of amendments going. They both want to make amendments. That's fine. Yes, hi, yes, Joni.
Following on what you just said, the list of axes of identity in the last whereas is not as complete as in the be it finally resolved. Do you want to make them the same?
Thank you for that question. Kind of not up to me. I think that the makers of the resolution, how do I put this? Expanded the resolved and figured that that was the most important part. And honestly, I think the resolved is the most important part. Oh, and by the way, I hate to say this, but we're supposed to be only discussing the resolves first. So do we have amendments on the resolves? Let's do that. I saw, Patrick, you had an amendment you wanted to make, and tell me your name again, I'm sorry. From Fort Myers, Florida. Sharon. Sharon, you had an amendment on the resolved or not? Did you want to offer an amendment to a whereas clause or to a resolved clause?
Wherever you need to insert the language of the ERA, the actual ERA.
That would be in a whereas. So let's talk about the resolves first. So Patrick, did you have an amendment to a resolved clause?
I'm Patrick Butler of Virginia now. Not everybody may know.
Yay, Patrick.
Yeah, and I see that my amendment is both the last whereas and the be it finally resolved.
Well, let's do the resolved first, and then we can always change the whereases later.
And my amendment is to insert the word sex before age in the identities, so that, and I understand why it was left out. But I further would say that I would withdraw that if the language of the Equal Rights Amendment were put into that, which would take care of the problem of.
Let me do this. Is there objection to including the word sex in the final resolved? Without objection, that amendment has been made. Thank you so much, Patrick. Is there any? Thank you. That's good. We've got it. And then we're going to talk about putting it in the resolved. Okay. Well, actually, is there objection to also putting the word sex in the final whereas? Just get that done. No, seeing none, then Ray, would you please put the word sex in front of the word race in the final whereas? And Emmy, you're following it right on there. I'm sorry, before age. Was that the first thing that was there? Age, yeah, before age. Okay. So sex, age. All right. So we've done that part, and then do we have, yes, the motion. Thank you so much. Okay, insert sex. That's Patrick's. Okay, so this was, all right, so amendment in the first whereas, insert U.S. before the word Constitution. So is there objection? So in the first whereas, and I believe, Ray, can you scroll to the first whereas of Resolution A, please? There we go. And so the motion is, keep going. The first whereas, yes. The motion, the first proposed amendment is to insert U.S. before the word Constitution. Do you see that? Yes. Is there objection to including U.S. in front of Constitution? Without objection, that is approved. And then the second proposed amendment is to amend Resolution A to include the actual wording of the ERA amendment. It would be better if the specific language of the motion were here. But let me offer something. Ray, could you type as I dictate, please? And we could make this the second whereas. All right. Whereas the text of the 1972 Equal Rights Amendment states, quote, ready? You keeping up? States, colon, open quotes, equality of rights under the law shall not be abridged, denied or abridged. Thanks. Somebody do this. I'm doing this from memory. Somebody get this right for me. Shall not be denied, shall not be denied, shall not be denied. Be denied. I know abridged. I'm waiting for my typist. Shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state. Now here, help me out here, like within its jurisdiction. Or any state on account of sex, that's what it says? Thank you. Okay, or any state on account of sex, period. Close quote. Is there objection to putting that whereas? Look at you. Thank you so much, Linda. Wait a minute, let's make sure, seriously, let me make sure I got it right. Shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of sex. Thank you so much. Okay. All right. Is there objection to this, adding this as the second whereas? Thank you so much. Without objection, hello? Okay, so two things, my dear. So let's come to the mic and stand online at the mic to make your comment. Thank you so much. And unfortunately, I did not hear an objection, and I did rule that the word sex would be in. Okay. Well, so. All right. Next time. Today for you, tomorrow for me. We'll just take turns. Sometimes you don't get everything you want, and I'm sorry for that. All right, so that the sex is in there. Do we now have another amendment proposed for Resolution A? Yes, Mary, please tell us who you are and what state you're from.
Mary Bennett, Illinois. Now, so I would like to add, and other allied organizations.
Where?
Yeah. You know, where it says Illinois now, where now organizations, now and other allied organizations. There are other organizations that support the allies.
So, all right, so if I may, let's go. Do you have it written down?
Yes.
Okay. The white goes to Ray, the pink goes to me, the yellow stays with you. And if we could have runners, like if we could get some interns to sort of do this, taking stuff to Ray and so forth, that would be awesome. Thank you. Okay. So the motion is, all right. I know. The motion is in the second resolved clause. Yes, here. Be it further resolved that this campaign will include working with state now organizations. What is the wording?
And other allied organizations.
Right. With state now organizations, and then insert the words and other allied organizations.
Yes.
All right. And other allied. And would you like to speak in favor of your motion?
Well, there
Oh,
are
wait,
other
sorry. Is there a second? Second. All right. Would you like to speak in favor of it, Mary?
There are other allied organizations like AAUW, CLU, various labor unions that support the Equal Rights Amendment. Why limit ourselves to now and not work collaboratively with all these organizations to pass the ERA? And we have a situation in Illinois right now that we need all the political firepower we can get. Why do it all by ourselves?
Thank you, Mary. Very good defense of your proposed amendment. So what's in order is discussion of the amendment that you see on your screens. It adds the words "and other allied organizations" in the second resolved as indicated. Is there discussion on this amendment? Are we ready for a vote? All in favor of this amendment, please raise your voting cards. And down. All opposed to this amendment, raise your voting cards. And the amendment passes. All right. I need to, oh yeah, you got that, okay. All right, so now we have, I'm gonna go to mic 3. We have another proposed amendment, and someone please bring it to me.
No.
Oh, it's Gordy. I know what you're gonna say, and I just called on you, so go ahead and say it.
I call the question on all pending matters regarding this resolution.
Thank you. I totally forgot. I was expecting Gina Austin fresh. Is there a second? Thank you. All right, so now we have a red card. Yes, Marion, tell us who you are and what state you're from.
My name is Marion Wagner. I'm from Indiana, Indiana Now, who celebrated in January 40 years since we became the 35th state to ratify. And I want to say we're really glad to not be the last state anymore. This isn't really a red card, but it's an editorial comment because I didn't just want to yell at you, Terry. I lost it now. The ERA, it's by any state.
We'll fix that. That's in the nature of a typo.
I understand, but I wanted to actually brag about our ratification.
If I may, that's actually not a red card, Marion, but it's okay. But all the rest of the people in the room who might want to use a red card in that way, sorry, there's only one person who gets to do that all day, and Marion already got it. So, not available anymore. Now, is there objection to voting on all pending matters involving Resolution A? There is objection to voting. All right, wait. We are not going to hear the objections. Because there is an objection, we will vote as to whether we are ready to vote. If we are to vote on this now, we need to have a 2/3 vote to move the question, right? So if you vote yes, and when I ask you to, voting yes means we go immediately to vote on this and we have no further discussion of Resolution A. Got it? Okay, so all in favor of voting now and no further discussion on Resolution A, please raise your voting cards. And it does require a 2/3 vote, so I need to really see your cards. Sorry, Alice. All right, lower your cards, please. All opposed to moving to an immediate vote, raise your cards. Yeah, we're going to a vote. I'm sorry, my dear. All right, so now what's in order is voting on Resolution A. All of the amendments to Resolution A have been adopted or accepted without objection. So Resolution A as amended, all in favor of Resolution A as amended, please raise your voting cards. All opposed, Raise your voting cards. And Amendment A has been adopted as amended. Thank you all so much. Okay, next in order is Resolution B. We have not read Resolution B aloud, and I'm going to for anyone who may be visually impaired in the room. Resolution B is, oh, you need this, don't you? That's that. Okay. Mobilize for Reproductive Justice, 2017 to 2018, that's just a, 2017 to 2018 National Action Program Resolution. Whereas, NOW's 2016 to 2017 National Action Program included an action campaign to press for the expansion of women's access to abortion care and birth control through litigation and legislative initiatives, and whereas, although right-wing lawmakers blocked pro-reproductive rights legislation in the 114th Congress, NOW and its allies secured a major Supreme Court victory in Whole Woman's Health v. Hellerstedt, which ruled the Texas clinic shutdown law unconstitutional, and whereas, yes, we like that. And whereas, under current law, the Affordable Care Act, 55 million women have access to vital preventive care. All right, so again, if we have conversations, just run outside the room real quick, and then when you're done, we can bring it back inside. And whereas 55 million women have access to vital preventive care, including contraception, mammograms, and screenings for cervical cancer and STDs, and tens of millions of previously uninsured people are now covered. And whereas the Trump administration and extremists in the 115th Congress are moving aggressively to repeal the ACA and replace it with a bill, the American Health Care Act, AHCA, and if I may editorialize, I actually call it the Alt Health Care Act, and the Better Care Reconciliation Act, BCRA, which would cut $880 billion from Medicaid, allow insurers to charge exorbitant rates for coverage of such services as maternity care and mental health care, and allow insurers to price people with pre-existing conditions out of coverage altogether, while giving corporations, billionaires, and millionaires nearly $1 trillion in tax breaks. And whereas the Trump administration has reinstated the global gag rule, signed a law allowing states to block funding for Title X family planning clinics, and is working with extremists in Congress to defund Planned Parenthood nationwide and make the Hyde Amendment permanent law. And whereas the U.S. Senate's recent confirmation of right-wing Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court after illegitimately blocking President Obama's nomination of Merrick Garland to that seat, leaves the reproductive rights of women hanging in the balance. And whereas access to reproductive health care is a matter of life and death for women, but is also an issue of economic and racial justice, therefore be it resolved that NOW will include in its 2017 to 2018 National Action Program a campaign to mobilize for reproductive justice, to stop the repeal of the ACA and demand improvements, to ensure Medicaid patients access to Planned Parenthood and other clinics that provide comprehensive reproductive care, including abortion, and pass legislation that would expand women's access to the full range of reproductive health services, such as the Each Woman Act, the Women's Health Protection Act, the Access to Birth Control Act, and others. And be it further resolved that this campaign will include mobilizing NOW leaders, members, and activists to be in constant contact with their members of Congress through phone calls, letters, emails, attendance at town hall meetings, and face-to-face meetings with their members of Congress, educating voters on how every member of Congress voted on the bill to repeal the ACA, and raising awareness of the stakes for women in the 2018 midterm elections. And be it finally resolved that NOW urges NOW-PAC to recruit, endorse, and work to elect progressive feminist candidates, especially women of color, who will make it a top priority to address the economic, racial, and social justice aspects of women's access to reproductive care. That is the resolution. Resolution B, yay. We have a proposed amendment. Okay, Mona Lisa, can you bring me the stuff and then tell us who you are and what the amendment is and why you like it? Thank you. Can you, yeah. So, wait, you keep the pink. Yeah. You keep that one. I keep the yellow. Thank you
Good
Mona
morning.
Lisa, you wrote this on the wrong side.
Oh.
Does anyone have a mirror?
Here I can.
It's all good. It's all good. No, I can do this. This is good. It's fine. Voters
I'm still on California time.
Members of Congress who voted.
It's so easy. Mona Lisa from San Francisco. Good morning, everyone. I just have a minor edit to the resolutions, where it says on voters on members of Congress who voted.
So can you tell me which clause you're talking
yeah,
about?
the second resolution.
Therefore,
be it further resolved.
Yes.
The first one of that last sentence, last part of it, that sentence. It says voters on how every member of Congress voted on the bill. Well, every member of Congress didn't vote on it. I think just grammatical correction. So it's voters, educating voters on members of Congress who voted.
Is there, shh, everybody. So there is a motion, and the typist, let me bring this to the typist, because it didn't come through on the white page. Now, say it to me really slowly, because I no longer have it in writing. So it's
this grammatically says that every member of Congress voted on the bill.
Yes, right.
So it could be also on how they voted, or some just.
So Mona Lisa, again, read your language to me, because I had to give it to
Ray.
Ray.
Maybe someone here who's better at grammar has a better version.
Bring me that pink sheet of paper, please. Take it away from Mona Lisa and give it to me. Yes, thank you. No, what she's saying is that they didn't all vote. But we have many suggestions as to how to make this clearer, but Mona Lisa is the one who actually has the motion on the floor. And the motion on the floor, is as follows. So Ray, we're ready to type? The motion on the floor,
okay.
And first it has to be seconded. So it's seconded, okay. So the motion on the floor is on the second to last line of the second resolved, right? That it would say voters on, and then Ray, can you insert as okay. Members, after the word on, insert members, there we go, of Congress who voted. Wait a minute. Members of Congress who voted. And then, you with me, Ray? Strike the words, how every member of Congress voted. Strike those words. That is the motion, correct?
Yes.
All right, what's in order is discussion of the motion. Mona Lisa, would you like to say why you speak in favor of your motion, please?
All right, I just wanted to make it more grammatically accurate, to not be ambiguous, to sound like all of the members voted on that. So I think my suggestion maybe isn't the best. Maybe educating voters on how members of Congress voted.
Okay, Ray. You know what? We're gonna
just take out, strike every.
Just strike the word every.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna do something that is really not correct. But Ray, would you please just, like Control Z and get us back to the thing, and then we'll do something else. All right, you ready? So I'm going to say that the proposed motion is, Ray, if you would strike the word every, right, and include the letter S after the word member. Okay. So Mona Lisa, is that your motion?
Yes.
And is it seconded? Thank you. So the motion has been made and seconded to strike the word every and make members plural. And Mona Lisa, you've already spoken in favor of it. Is there further discussion on this amendment? There is a red card. Yes. Is it a real red card?
The hotel says checkout time is 11 o'clock.
Yes. And what time is it now?
Not 11:30.
Oh, thank you.
our scheduled time to stop was 11 o'clock, right?
Where's my thing? It's 10:20, I think, right now. All right. Yeah, does it take? Okay. All right, let's do this. Shh, shh, shh. So everybody, it's 10:22. Let's go ahead and finish up Resolution B. And then, is there any objection that we break from 10:30 to, somebody give me the, what did we originally say? So a half-hour break for people to, so is there any objection to instead breaking at 10:30 and coming back at 11 o'clock? Okay, great. All right, thank you. So we'll go ahead and finish up B, and then we'll break so that you can check out, and then come back at 11. Is there further discussion of this amendment to? Is there further discussion of this amendment to this resolved clause? No. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So there is none. So all in favor of this amendment, please raise your voting cards. Thank you very much. All opposed? And the amendment passes. All right. Joni, you had another amendment. And do you have it written down, please? And by the way, just for a little, when you have an amendment, please state where, when you have an amendment, please write on the white sheet. Don't write on the pink, write on the white. All right, so Joni, you'll have to redo it, please. Because we can't read it. You have to write it on the white.
Well, I have my copy, so you have a legible pink and yellow there.
Okay, good. Okay, that's fine. So please write your amendment on the white side, and when you write it, it should say, in such and such resolved clause, or in the such and such whereas clause, strike the words blah, 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 and insert the words blah, blah, blah. Okay. Right? We typically don't put blah in the final language, but if you guys get the drift, it's all good. Right, and please write the letter of the resolution, because when we go back in our records, we need to see which resolution we were talking about. So look at this, it's perfect, thank you. It says in Resolution B, and wait, we're on, just one moment. Yeah, we're on B. Before I take a motion on a whereas, I want to finish up the therefores. So do we have any further discussion of any resolve clauses? Say no. Okay, good. Thank you. All right. Now, Joni, what's in order is discussion of a whereas clause. You have a motion to amend.
Okay, Joan Wakovitz, Palm Beach County, Florida now, with my hat on as a former HIV/AIDS providing physician. I went to the March for Equality in Washington on June 11th, and at the March for Equality, the speaker after speaker, particularly LGBT people of color and trans women of color, made the point that we would lose the ability to cover pre- and post-exposure prophylaxis for every person who gets kicked off Medicaid. There is a pill that you can take every day to prevent getting HIV/AIDS if you have multiple sexual partners, or if your partner is HIV positive. There is a pill that you can take after exposure to a sexual partner that you think might have HIV/AIDS one time to prevent infection. These have been covered by Medicaid for 2 years and are given out at Planned Parenthood and other participating healthcare organizations. And every single one of the 23 million would lose the ability to protect themselves against HIV/AIDS. Therefore, I suggest we insert in the third clause, after mammograms, pre- and post-exposure prophylaxis for HIV/AIDS.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all your work in this area. It's really, really important. So it's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion on this proposed amendment to the third whereas clause? Yes, Meredith.
I'm the chairperson for the committee, and Joan brought this up during the discussion. On behalf of the committee members, both Cindy Drawback and Nancy Campbell-Mead, we support this amendment.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. Is there further discussion on this amendment? Seeing none, we are ready to vote. All those in favor of this amendment, please raise your voting cards. All opposed? All right, this amendment passes. Now what is in order is voting on the resolution as amended. All right? All those in favor of the resolution as amended, please raise your voting cards and lower them. And opposed? And thank you so much. We have another resolution passed. All right. It is now 10:27. We will be in recess until 11 o'clock so that people can check out of their hotel rooms. Thank you.